Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel, the psychology student, bringing you his 2 cents on psychology, motivation, philosophy. I pay the big bucks. I pay the tuition fees, so you don't have to. I strip away all that unnecessary fat, and I just bring you the essentials. Thank you very much for joining me today. I missed out on last week because you know how it goes. Work, stuff comes up last minute. Regardless, I'm happy to have you. Thank you, whether you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I appreciate you. Without further ado, today's topic is going to be about understanding personal autonomy. Now, whenever I talk about a subject, there are so many layers and it is so complex. You're never going to see one video that's just one video on autonomy, one video on dating, because there's so many layers and there's constantly new studies coming about that it's too much information to put into one 20, 30-minute video or episode. So today we're only going to look at one perspective of autonomy, and it's going to be looking at the autonomy of making choices. And if you've ever had this situation, and I bet you have, you'll really resonate with this. You tell someone to do something, or let's say they even better, they come to you for advice. They say, hey man, should I do A, B, or C? This could be your friend, this could be a family member, this could be a coworker. You say, in my opinion, weighing pros and cons, A makes the best sense. Go do that. And then they go with a different choice. Or they don't do anything. 2-3 weeks later, they come back and then they end up doing A. And you're sitting there going, dude, I told you to do this. Why didn't you listen to me 2 weeks ago when I told you? This is an example that I want to give that'll hopefully expand the perspective of a person's autonomy in relation to giving advice and wanting to help one another out. Let's say you have an individual who comes to you and says, look, I want you to take me from Vancouver, British Columbia, to Calgary in Alberta, okay? 2 big cities in Canada. I want you to take me from Vancouver to Calgary. Now, in your mind is, all right, man, we're going to get you, we're going to shove you in a plane, and we're going to fly over. That's the fastest way to go. It's the most convenient way to go. The problem is that individual, he might not want to fly. Maybe he wants to drive. Maybe he wants to fly halfway and then drive the rest. Maybe he wants to hitchhike. Maybe he wants to split a ride with a couple of strangers. So he knows where he wants to go, and he's telling you the destination, but there is some differences between the method of how to get there. Is it biking? Is it flying? Now you sit there and you go, look, it might rain. It'll take longer for you to get there based on the time, based on the money. This way makes the most sense. This is the way you should do it. Because what if there's construction? What if there's fires going on? Places are closed. You might not find any hotels and stuff on the way. This is the best way you should go. And now the problem becomes when that individual doesn't take that advice, when they go their own way, and you want to help them. Now, for a stranger, this is a little bit easier. You can say something, they don't listen, you say whatever. The problem where this becomes complex is if it's a family member, okay? Imagine you go to a counselor or you go to a psychologist for a second. They come and they say, look, the problem is X. The therapist, the counselor, the psychologist, whoever they are, they have an answer in their mind. Like their mind, they go, okay, this is the quickest solution. The question is, are you aware of that solution? And secondly, is that the solution that you want? You might want to do something that might be a little more harmful, that'll take you longer to resolve the conflict, but you might prefer that as opposed to the first one. Now, listening to this, you're going to say, Daniel, who in their right mind would want to do something that's harder? My friends, it's not about objectivity, it's about subjectivity, and it's about perception. Sometimes an individual perceives something to be easier, to be more beneficial, and when that's the case, you can sit down, black and white, tell them, look, this is it. It's going to save you more money, it's going to be more comfortable, it's going to be more convenient, but for whatever reason, they choose to go another path. So as a counselor, as a therapist, as a psychologist, I don't sit there and go, look, this is the best thing that you should do, unless you ask me for my opinion explicitly. But I understand that you want to go to that destination, and I understand that you have a series of options, all with their pros and cons. And I might take a plane from Vancouver to Calgary, but that doesn't mean you should. If your number one biggest problem is financially, well, now it's different, isn't it? So I'm careful, and I want to make sure that I don't shove that one answer down your throat. Now, what happens when that individual is your best friend? What happens when that individual is your son or your brother, a family member whom you care about? And you're thinking to yourself, you're going, look, this is wrong. Like, I know this, like, you would be so much better doing X, or this isn't for you. You could do so much better here or there, or look, I've made this mistake before when I was younger. Now I want to warn you as a family member who cares for you so you don't repeat the same mistakes that I did. But my advice is falling on deaf ears. My best friend, my you won't listen to me, and it sucks, and I don't understand why. I've been hurt, and I don't want you to get hurt. But it appears like I'm not getting through to you. This is a problem that many people have found themselves in, and if you haven't, trust me, you will. There will be times where there's someone who you care about deeply, and it looks like they're attempting to do something or going a certain way, and you want to look out for them, and you want to give them the best possible advice. The problem becomes when sometimes you're in a position where you're going, look, this is the best advice either for me or objectively. But the question is, do they understand that advice is objective or is it subjective? For example, when does talking back for kids start in relation to psychology? When you look at adolescent psychology between the ages of 12 and 19, that's where the talking back begins. Why? Before the age of 12, if we look at our brain, which is extremely complex, we don't understand all of it, but we know a lot of our decision-making, judgment calls, and logical thinking is up here, known as the frontal lobe. Now, this actually doesn't develop until our early 20s, and generally when we think of adulthood, you're mature now, I would say that a big part of it is based on this idea of the frontal lobe developing, the area responsible for decision-making and judgments and whatnot. Now, when you're really, really young, a kid looks at mom and dad's word as the word of God. Like when you're 5, 6, 7, like mom and dad is always right. That doesn't mean you're not going to butt heads. That doesn't mean they're not going to want to wear the clothes that you set out for them to wear. But generally speaking, like, you are their everything. You are their math teacher, you are their coach, you are their doctor, like you are their everything, right? When you reach ages 13 to 19, because of puberty and some other factors, as the brain expands, you start looking at things differently. A conversation that is very common is a mother will pull her 14-year-old daughter aside and go, hey, Jennifer, I don't think you should wear that skirt. That's a little low for school. Like, it's wrong. So what the mother is doing is saying, look, this is objectively wrong. But the daughter oftentimes will reply, and I'm very generalizing here, hardcore, just to give you an example of how this works. The daughter will respond by saying something like, well, maybe it's wrong for you. Or maybe back in your day, girls didn't wear skirts like this, but in my day they do. What's happening here? You have one individual who's talking about it objectively, like this is wrong, universally. You have another person that's saying, well, look, if you don't like it, don't wear it. I'm going to wear it. So it's that personal autonomy. It's looking at it in terms of right or wrong, hot and cold. It's like, well, it might be cold to you, but that doesn't mean it's going to be cold for me. So that's a big thing that we notice in that adolescent period. And look, sometimes it sticks, man. Like sometimes you got 20, 25, 30-year-olds who still have that same attitude. And that's not to say your parents are right all the time about everything, but it's realizing that just because I think getting to a certain destination is the best doesn't mean that that's the destination that you want to take necessarily. Again, if you are a family member of mine and you're younger than me, I might feel obligated to push you in a certain way. Because a lot of people listening to this advice are going, okay, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that everybody, even though they know the destination, they have to pick their own route. Some people want to hike, some people want to fly, some people want to crawl, and I got to let them. What if my kid's 6 years old? Are you telling me as a dad, as a parent, as an older brother, I got to sit back and let the kid do what he wants to do? Doesn't that make me irresponsible? How different am I from just a stranger? Where is that line between responsibility and obligation versus providing some autonomy? I don't know. I don't know what the line is. But what I do know is this. There's definitely a balance. Look, you have a kid, and maybe you go, buddy, this is what you're going to wear to school today. And you throw him some shirt and you throw him some shoes. Is that fine? Sure. Okay. Another example is you have a kid. You say, look, buddy, you wear whatever the heck you want. You're 6 years old. You got a closet. Put your own stuff on. Go to school. Do people do that? Yeah, absolutely. Is it fine? Sure. Another thing you could do is you could go pick out 3 outfits for the little guy or little gal. You could put them on the bed. Go, look, out of these 3, which one do you want? And the kid or the girl says, well, I want this one. I want the blue one. Well, now what you've done is I call it autonomy, but it's like modified autonomy. You're not giving them free reign, right? You're choosing the outfits, but when you give them a little bit of a choice, it's like you get to pick how you go to school in these constraints that I believe are appropriate. And if you look at if you look at different parenting styles for people who are interested, it won't be about this video, but the next one, possibly. Type in things like authoritative parenting, authoritarian parenting. There's a couple of different styles of parenting in terms of how lenient they are, how strict they are, how loving they are. And what the literature will tell us is the parents who end up having the closest bond with their children, and children who grow up being confident and secure, ready to go out into the world, are people who have a good sense, for lack of a better term, of kindness. So very kind, loving, gentle towards their kids, yet also firm and have high standards for them. Because if you're too lenient, certain things are great. They might look at you as a friend, but they don't see you as a coach, as a motivator to push them. Vice versa, if you're too hard, if you're too strict, if you're pushing this kid so hard to get the A's, to be in all the clubs, but then you're not loving and as supportive and as caring, well, naturally, it's not going to be that bond that you might want to cherish later on in life. So it's finding that balance in between. With my own friends, I've had many situations where we're talking about autonomy, where they said, look, Daniel, I need your advice. Do I do A or do I do B? And we sit down and I go, look, man, in my opinion, you should do A. That's the one you should do. And they're listening, they go, all right. I see them a week later, like, hey man, how'd it go? I did B. And I don't sit there and go, why didn't you listen to me? I don't sit there and go, well, look, why did you waste my time in asking for my opinion if you weren't going to follow it? Sometimes people just want to hear another opinion to just see a different perspective. Other times, a person might have already chosen what they want to do, but if they hear your opinion that reinforces it, it'll make them feel even better about it. So they go, oh, look, if Daniel agrees with me doing X, that means maybe doing X isn't such a bad thing after all. Like, oh, great, like he thinks the same way that I do. So it builds more confidence in that decision. Once again, the tricky part is, what do you do when they're young? And my hope is if you can kind of provide autonomy with a constraint of some sorts, like if there's an in-between between, like your kid's, let's say 12. He's like, Dad, like, what should I do when I get older? And I think there's a balance where you don't go, you can do whatever you want. Drop out of school, versus you got to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Shout out to my Middle Eastern and Asian friends, right? I hope there's an in-between. And I don't know how that is. I don't know what that is. I'd like to think that's between the parents, that's between their kids, your values, your ideals, what you want out of life. But generally speaking, if the child or the individual has a little bit of autonomy, it usually goes a lot smoother. Now, how much autonomy, to what level of autonomy, I've got no idea. That's up to you. You can go back to my example of laying out the 3 outfits for the kid, right? It doesn't even have to be kid. It could be grown adults. You're sitting in the car with your girlfriend. How are you hungry? Oh, babe, I'm starving. What would you like? I don't know. Well, look, what do you want? We can literally go anywhere. I don't know, right? As opposed to you just saying, look, are you hungry? Yeah, awesome, me too. We got a burger place, we got a sushi place, we got a pizza place. What would you like? Burger, pizza, sushi. So now, constrained autonomy. Look, it's your choice. But I've made it easier for you because I've laid it out. And this way, it's not like one person is just demanding. Like you're both making the decisions together. There's compromising. Now, context is extremely important. What are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Are they mentally capable to understand the consequences of the situation? Is it a 15-year-old who's using lots of marijuana? There's a lot of things to consider. Just because like one 15-year-old doesn't look the same as another 15-year-old. But 15-year-old is also under the age of 25. And the effects of marijuana use under the age of 25 are definitely a lot more severe than if you're over the age of 25 in terms of your brain development. So what do you say? Do you say not at all? You say not in my household. If I find that stuff, I'm kicking you out. Do you say, look, buddy, you can do it, but only with me once a week? Who am I to tell you what is right and what is wrong in your own household? That's kind of like me saying, if you're a guy, you should have 4 wives. Oh, should you? Is it wrong for a guy to have 4 wives? Oh. What the general idea, like I don't want people listening to this being like, dude, what a schmuck. He makes videos for 15 minutes and then he just says, I don't know at the end. Right? The whole basis of this is you're the one making the decisions. I just outline, look, there's different possibilities, there's different methods. Unless I'm saying, look, a study found X. But take that with a grain of salt. The results found a statistical significance, which is whatever. But if you want to go from Vancouver to Calgary, I need to be careful about shoving an answer down your throat. You might ask me, Daniel, what's the best martial arts? What's the best car? What's the best age that a kid should start playing guitar? And in that sense, I can give you what I think is best in my opinion. But just because I say it doesn't mean you should follow it. You should take it, listen to it, put it in like a nice little bookshelf with all the other opinions that people have told you that you've heard, and then you make your own decision at the end. Like, that's the most important thing. And my hope is if you talk to enough people, you've got a lot more data to go off of. You've got a lot more studies and experiences and knowledge to go off of, as opposed to just listening to one or to two people. So when it comes to autonomy, it is very complex, and it's not a straight line at all. You got to be careful about what you say, how you say. Sometimes a kid they would rather make their own choice, even though it's not as great, than follow a parent's choice, because it's the parent's choice. For example, if I tell a kid to go, hey, you should go work at X, they would go work at Y, make a little bit less money. It'll be a little bit harder, but they're making the choice. Now, to a logical person, this doesn't make any sense. You're sitting there going, why would you do that to yourself? I'm not trying to harm you. I'm trying to help you. I want the best for you. And when they go the other way, it's a very tough spot to be in. I made the example months ago about, imagine someone's drowning and you say, it is my obligation to save you. You reach out your hand and they don't take it. You see someone who needs help. You reach out your hand to help them and they don't take it. What happens now? Do you jump in the water? Well, now you're going to say, well, then it depends. Can I swim? How deep is the water? How cold is it? Who's in the water? Is it some stranger or is that my younger brother? These are all factored in. And what is the situation? Is it about a job? Is it about a drug addiction? Is it about a relationship? Imagine you have a female friend of yours who you're very close with and she's in an abusive relationship. And you can tell her, you should leave, this isn't healthy, you got to talk until the cows come home, but she just does her own thing. And you appear to reach out your hand, but she doesn't want to take it. Can you force someone to be helped against their will? Generally speaking, it's very hard. I mean, if someone's like in a really bad place mental health-wise, maybe you could get them into a psychiatric hospital against their will, and then they need someone like to sign them out. But I mean, for most cases, it is extremely hard, if not just impossible. I can't forcefully help you. It's about how you want to get help. Let me end this video by giving you this true story. I'm passing this crosswalk. I press the button goes red for the car, so I'm good to go. As I'm walking, this guy's on this scooter, and it's an electrical scooter. And he maybe didn't see me, or he was a little too late, but when he hits the brakes, this dude flies. He flies up in the air. Scooter does a little tumbles, and he hits the concrete hard. And he's just lying there, and I'm standing in front of him. I was on my way to the swimming pool. And the interesting thing was, when the lights turned green, there was about 3 cars right there, and he literally bails just a little bit, like where a bike lane would be. He's face down, and he's not moving. And I'm in front of him. When the light turns green, just for people listening, not a single car stopped to help. Not one car. A person didn't even roll down their window, like just for virtue signaling, go, hey man, is he okay? Do you want me to call out? No one. Everyone just saw me standing beside him and said, well, this kid's probably got it covered. Well, what if I would have walked away too? Anyways, all the cars drive by. This guy's laying on his face. Immediately, I'm thinking, man, maybe worst case scenario, maybe something with his spine. He sits up and he's got this giant cut over his head. He's bleeding down. He's holding his arm. And you could see that shock of when you get hit really hard and you're not expecting it, there's almost this level of shock and disorientation. And his eyes were really wide, and I could tell he didn't really know where he was or what was going on. And he tried to stand up, and I go, hey man, just sit down. Be careful. Sometimes in movies, you hear someone get hit really hard, and then the person helping them says, don't move. And the joking here is like, well, actually, I was going to get up and do some cartwheels. The reason why people say don't move is if you hit your head, and we think it's a spinal injury meaning anything from the back of your neck is connected to your body, connected to your muscle, connected to your legs, is the spine is so delicate, especially for older folks, that if you hit your head badly and that connection between your spine and the rest of your body is severed, you're looking at getting paralyzed, not being able to use your legs. If it's worse, not being able to use your body from your neck down. And if it's even worse, death. So the moment someone falls, I like to take precautions. If I don't have to, I say, man, sit. Don't worry about getting up. And as he was sitting there, I'm going through, because I've done first aid for 5-6 years, right? I'm going through, I'm thinking, okay, look, man, we can grab you some ice from McDonald's. We can call 911. They can show up. They can check you out. Just make sure everything is okay. We can grab some napkins from McDonald's as well. We can put it on the cut, clean it up. Hopefully it's not going to get infected. So I'm saying all this stuff out loud. We got to do this. We got to do that. And we can bring you over to the side. You can stay sitting down. And then after I say all that, the guy looks at me and he goes, do you got a smoke on you? And I look at him, I say, what? Now, this gentleman was in his maybe 40s, and he looked a little sketchy, and he was smelling like alcohol, like he reeked of alcohol. I don't know if he was drunk while he was on a scooter, but I want you to just imagine this guy sitting in the road. There's the 3 cars just drove by him, bleeding down from half his face. He's holding his arm. I give him all these examples about, hey man, we're going to call 911. There's a McDonald's right there. We're going to grab you some ice, grab you some napkins, do this. Sounds good? And he's, do you have a smoke on you? And I'm sitting there and going, no. And he goes, forget all that stuff, man. I just need to smoke. And I remember I just stood there. I go, wait, you don't want me to call 911? He goes, no, don't do it. And I just stood there. And then this couple's walking by. This man and this woman, they're walking their dog. They go, oh my God, what happened? Do you guys want us to call 911? What can we do? He looks over at them and he goes, do you guys have a smoke? So I was in this position where all the training, everything aside, I've already planned in my head. He wouldn't accept the help. So guess what I did? I left. You're sitting there going, Dan, you left? Look, he's on the ground. It wasn't like a bad cut, but it was on the head. It was bleeding. It didn't look pretty. He was wiping it off with his sleeve. I didn't know how badly he was hurt. Maybe a twisted ankle, sprained, could have been worse. He was holding his arm. I got no idea what's wrong with him. That's what I wanted to call. But when an individual doesn't accept it, and he goes, look, he wanted to get better the same way I wanted him to get better. In my mind, that would include calling 911. If you're ever at a grocery store, you can easily get a bag of ice. Just run over there. But hey guys, do you guys have a bag of ice? They sometimes have first aid kits, which can help out. If you don't know what to do, by the way, small sliver, if you're ever in a first aid situation, best thing you could do, man, is call 911. They'll never be upset. Call 911, be like, hey, I'm standing in this crosswalk. This guy fell down, hit his head, he's bleeding. What should I do? And sometimes they'll walk you through it. Sometimes they'll say, well, send someone your way. Sometimes they say, look, you've done the best you could do. It's fine. Sometimes they'll say, put him on the phone. So if you don't know what to do, guys, call 911. They'll literally walk you through the situation. Okay, is he breathing? Is he talking? Is he conscious? Is he sitting or is he standing? Did you see him hit his head? Is there anyone else around? Can you get it? So 100% do it. Don't be afraid to call. Anyways, long story short, I left him. I just walked away. And I remember my first thought was like, man, like I hope he's okay. Like, what if he has some damages, but he's in shock so he doesn't realize how messed up he is? And then later on, he finds out that something's really wrong in his body, I was more worried about his arm. And I remember thinking, man, should I have done more? And then I thought, no, there's nothing I could have done. If a person, a conscious person, at least in Canada, turns down your help and goes, no, I do not want help, legally, I can't help them. Until they go unconscious, then it's free game. But he said, no, man, I don't want any help. He said, don't touch me. So I just left. Now that's a stranger, and that was hard. It was not an easy thing to do. That was a stranger, and I walked away. I left him in his own blood. Imagine that's your friend. Imagine that's your sibling. It doesn't have to be that, but a metaphor for maybe they're using drugs. Maybe they're in a bad relationship. At what stage do you walk away? And by the way, I stayed with this guy for minutes. Like, I don't want you to think, oh, you're good, peace out. I was reasoning with him. I was going, please, man, are you sure? We could sit down. We could do something. I go, just take a breath. Just turn it all down. So sometimes you're in a position where even though you want to help, your hands are tied. And it's very hard to force it on someone. So on that not very positive but realistic note, take that, think about it. Most importantly, apply it to your own life. Thank you for listening. I hope that this was interesting. I hope that this provided you some new perspective. Please stay safe, take care of yourselves, and Enjoy, folks. You'll hear from me again next week. Bye-bye.